6.5 years. That's how long our family's been crafting its story. So far, we've got two main characters, our daughters. One's 5. The other just turned 2. Both were eagerly awaited, cherished, wanted, and yes, very much planned. I'm 34, and my wife is 2.5 years younger. But just 2 weeks ago, our little paradise got hit by a storm. I found out my wife had been unfaithful. And not only did I find out, I came face to face with it. The scene felt like something out of a bad joke. I'd run home to grab some milk, and there I was, standing in my own apartment, staring at her lover. He bolted out of there like he'd been scalded, which, honestly, matched how I was feeling inside. And the guy? He wasn't just some random stranger. No, he was a mutual acquaintance, practically a friend. He was 7 years older than me. We'd only gotten close with his family recently, right after he'd helped us with some home renovations before the holidays. I guess that's when my wife took notice of him. She liked him, found him interesting to talk to. Saying I was furious doesn't even come close, but I didn't lash out or start swinging fists. That's not my style. I'm not the confrontational type, more laid back, although I'll admit, I can be a bit sharp with my mom sometimes. The lover, on the other hand, seemed a bit rattled, but not much more than that. He was stronger than me, physically, but that didn't matter. After all, we'd known each other for 13 years, and the idea of fighting felt ridiculous. Instead, a strange thought crossed my mind. If he didn't want to be here, he wouldn't have stayed this long. We exchanged a few words, a conversation soaked in bitterness. I was trying to piece it all together, wondering aloud how this even happened. We were supposed to be friends. How long has this been going on? I asked. His answer was vague at best. Not that long. Then he had the nerve to tell me to cool off. Let her do what she wants for now. I left. I went to look for my wife. She was caught off guard, confused. It's over, I told her. Everything inside me turned upside down. Everything was boiling, and my heart was pounding like crazy. The evening air was filled with the fresh smell of rain. I came home from work earlier than usual. However, when I returned home, a strange, inexplicable sadness settled in my chest. The apartment was alarmingly quiet, and even the slightest rustling echoed too loudly. I started to pack my things, moving on autopilot, as if it was some kind of chore and not the end of everything I knew. They came back. My wife pleaded with me not to leave, but I couldn't find any real remorse in her eyes. Just fear. I kept packing my things. It wasn't until she realized I was dead serious that Milana broke down, sobbing, begging me to forgive her mistake and stay. The weight in my chest grew heavier. A lump formed in my throat, and tears threatened to spill from my eyes too. She was crying her heart out. Our eldest, not really understanding what was happening, started crying as well, pleading with me not to go. Even the little one, sensing the tension, joined in with her own tears. Torn apart by all these conflicting emotions, I left my packing unfinished. I figured I'd load up the car later, under the cover of night, to avoid the neighbors witnessing this mess. I called a friend and offered to open a cognac. I needed a distraction, at least for a while. I would not say that I drink heavily. This is far from the case. I'm not a fan of alcohol, but like most people, I like to drink from time to time, especially in good company. This year, our family had a lot of fun gatherings, especially with the family of my wife's lover. Strangely enough, we started communicating with them as a family. So that evening, sitting in my car with my friend, we sipped cognac and talked about everything that came to mind. Naturally, I didn't tell him anything about what was really going on. Later that evening, I went home and went straight to bed. On Saturday morning, I got up and started packing for good. By lunchtime, my wife and children left for dance classes, and I finished loading things into my car and drove away. I told her I'd stay with my mom. Over the weekend, we exchanged text messages and chatted on social media. She apologized over and over again, saying that she was sorry for everything and that she still believed in our love, that we could be happy again. I asked her why she did it. She said that I stopped paying attention to her, that I was tired of life. I couldn't deny my role in this. Lately, I've been so exhausted by work that I've fallen asleep on the couch almost every night, barely giving her the attention she deserved. Our intimate life has become routine, infrequent. Sometimes I was so exhausted that I just lost heart, and it drove a wedge between us. I felt like everything was slipping away, but I didn't do anything to fix it. It was a vicious circle. I stopped paying attention to her without even realizing it. And then, when I finally wanted intimacy and affection, she had already distanced herself, pushing me away even more. It seemed to me that I was the only one who tried. Things got even worse. Instead of facing the truth, my wife threw herself into social media. Of course, I also use social media, but I've never crossed any boundaries there. Gradually, we began to move away from each other, and I think it actually started at the beginning of the year. One day, quite by accident, she forgot to log out of her tablet, and I came across her correspondence with her former roommate. She was openly flirting with him. I even suspected that he had been in our apartment. She claimed that it wasn't serious, that he never actually came, and that she remained faithful to him. But she admitted that she needed to strengthen her self-confidence because I made her feel abandoned. It happened in May. After that, we just continued to live our normal lives. In September, I took the kids and my mom on a trip to the mountains. My wife and my mom don't get along very well. That's putting it mildly. But even during that vacation, we didn't stop fighting. She was chained to her phone and constantly texting. Now I know who it was. Less than a week after we got back, I walked in on her committing adultery. I know psychologists don't like using the term cheating, but what else can I call it? I've been living apart from my family for almost 2 weeks now, though I still see my wife and kids from time to time. I love them deeply. My wife's been asking me to come back, but her pleas have become less frequent, less emotional. She says we need to work on things, that it's still possible to fix what's broken. The last time we saw each other was Monday. On Tuesday, I didn't reply to some of her messages, and she wrote that she could see I wanted to come back, but that I wasn't letting myself do it. She's even threatened to leave the city, saying the kids would grow up without a father if things didn't change. That led to a string of messages where we just blamed each other. She said she wasn't going to change or become more kind and understanding, since she never had been all these years. She asked me not to drag out my decision. That night, still wrapped up in all those emotions, I replied that there was nothing left to save, that our love had died. As much as I love her, and as much as I adore my children, I can't hold a family together just for their sake. Kids need to see happy parents, and we're not going to find happiness together. I added that it wasn't all my fault, that the kids would grow up without a father, and that my wife needed to use her head too. In the morning, I started regretting burning those bridges, but we haven't spoken since. I'll see her tomorrow. I need to bring milk for the kids. This situation is incredibly painful and difficult. Inside me, 2 conflicting emotions are battling it out. One side wants to mend things, to love my wife and daughters again, while the other insists that a real man shouldn't go back to someone who's cheated. Otherwise, she'll see him as a pushover. I feel heartbroken for the kids and the damage to our relationship. I could really use some advice on what to do. Maybe I overreacted. I can't confide in anyone about this, not even my mom. I told her it was just a fight. Although she has her suspicions, she's never thought highly of my wife. I've defended her against my mom many times. It's always been tough in that regard. It all started when we met at work, where my mother also worked. I was her boss. She was a married employee, and we began an affair. After she divorced, we faced a lot of challenges, but eventually decided to be together and got married. We've overcome many obstacles together. I was even present at the birth of our daughter. I hadn't had any serious relationships before my wife. My mom raised me alone, and then I focused on my studies and career. Now, in this tough situation, I'm at a loss. I need to figure out whether to end it or try to save it. If I choose to save it, how do I go about it? There's no initiative from her side anymore. Maybe she's tired of begging for forgiveness. One option is to try talking things over tomorrow, to forgive each other, forget the past, and rebuild our love based on the good times we've had. But a part of me, the part that's still holding on, thinks that's not the right approach. That part says I should cut ties and move on. Deep down, I really want to make things work and have a full family life. For myself and for the kids, I know if we break up, I won't find happiness for a long time, and I certainly won't start a new family or have more children. I've made up my mind about that.